Hello, welcome to Garden Chronicles. I am James David, and in today's video, I would like to talk about my Anthurium collection, which I have managed to collect over the past few years. I must say that in comparison to so many other plants, especially orchids, begonias, and even alocasias, Anthurium seems to be very hardy and easy to care for in my garden setting. So here is just I would like to talk a little bit about my garden review on the Anthurium collection here. So sit back and enjoy the show. I must say that this is my first Anthurium, and especially when it comes to beginner's luck factor, especially when you're first trying your hands on a trial and error basis, I would rather recommend you to try on this particular Anthurium, commonly known as a mini. Anthurium crystallinum is one of the most easiest to cultivate, and once you get a hang of it, you can slowly try your hands on the more challenging ones. There is some contention when it comes to Anthurium crystallinum, especially here in my region. One of the factors here is because most of these anthuriums are actually cultivating using seeds, and of course when it comes to pollen, most of these particular types have been cross-pollinated and may have a little bit of its hybrid essence on this particular plant. Hence that's where the challenge comes in when it comes to ID. One of the most difficult factors is that when comes to parentage, the most dominant characteristics of two parents will actually take prominent. Hence when it comes to crystallinums, especially like this particular type, you can actually able to just put it in a general terms where there are actually many variation and varieties when it comes to crystallinums. However, for the sake of this particular video, I'm just generalizing this as Anthurium crystallinum mini. Hence, because of this factor where there are miniature leaf in a compact form. To my understanding, this is the size of the plant. It will not actually grow bigger than this particular size. This is another type of Anthurium crystallinum, another hybrid, which is actually originated from Indonesia. This particular hybrid is a cross between crystallinum and Bessie. I actually purchased this particular stem cutting, more like what do you call the stem bare root kind of cutting, where it does not have any roots nor the leaves. What I have actually done is, if you can see over here, I have actually placed it in this perlite and lacquer balls, and this took me roughly about 3 months to show some progress. Normally it take about 2 months so for the new roots to appear. Then within the 3rd month, first leaf will appear, and it will take a very long time, so you may have to be very patient about it. And in some cases where the stem may just rot away and there will not be any sign of root, but in my hands I've actually purchased 3 of it, and all 3 were actually successful. So in a way there is a little bit of a gamble here. However, because I purchased it for a very cheap price, so I'm willing to try my hands on this rather than buying on a premium price. Another factor about when it comes to hybrids, you may not really actually see much of a difference on the plant, except when it actually grows very huge. It actually will take about few years for it to actually see a strong growth on that. Anyway, just because this is very much of my trial and error basis, so I'm willing to try my hands on this rather than buying premium expensive plants. However, putting a label actually makes a lot of difference, because I don't really see much of a difference between a common crystallinum plant. So this is one of the things that you actually have to have a trial on a factor about it. You will actually never know until you actually grow the plant. I must say Crystal Hope is one of my prized possession because of the unique factors, the features that is available on this particular foliage. I have not seen any of other types of Anthurium actually have this kind of features. I would rather say that this could be a hybrid between Anthurium Crystallinum with dorayaki. However, I'm not very sure about it. But however, one thing I can say is that there are so many different variations and varieties available on when it comes to Anthurium, so you may have to be a little bit selective in collecting them. Another factor that I must say is that these types of Anthurium are actually very expensive, and so buying a small plant and growing them is much more affordable and practical if you're looking for cost. And I would really not recommend anyone to quickly jump in the gun without really actually experiencing on them, because they can be sensitive, where I have heard a lot of gardeners have actually killed them buying premium plants that cost at least about 3 to 5k, and that's a lot of money. So in a way, yes, it's a beautiful hobby to cultivate, but I would rather say prudent and wise, being wise actually makes a lot of difference when it comes to plant hobby. Other than that, when it comes to Anthuriums as such as these, once you get a hang of it, when you try your hands on a crystallinum and you have figured it out how it actually works, more or less all the care and cultivation is almost the same. Another factor about this particular Crystal Hope is that it is actually a very slow growing plant, and like most Anthuriums, they only shoot out one leaf per month. Hence, a lot of care is required not to damage the leaves, because it will take a very long time for it to form, and it will not, if you were to find that it is not a clustered type rather than a single plant, so it is actually a very slow growing plant. Crystal Hope is actually much more of an easier variety compared to dorayaki. I must say that this particular Anthurium is one of the most difficult one to take care. I believe this is not so much of a tropical type rather than a cold hardy. Hence it has actually seen better days. There's a lot of damage on this particular leaf. I think due to the humidity factor, and it's also a very slow growing plant. If you notice, the growth is not as good and fast comparison to crystallinum. So in a way, I also heard that some other gardeners actually having problems with it, and most of their plants actually died. And one of the other factors that I mentioned to you, that this is actually more of an imported plant, not actually came not cultivated here around Malaysia or Indonesia region, not available so much in this Southeast Asia. Rather, I believe this is very much imported from North America region. If I'm not wrong, this is actually imported from Belgium. Hence, because of the cold hardy factor, this particular plant is taking its toll for becoming a little bit of acclimatization factor. One of the most important things that I've actually done is I have actually uprooted the plant and changed the soil medium, because I find that the whole plant is actually grown in a cocoa pit, which I find that is not suitable in my garden situation. So what I've done here is that I've actually planted it with cocoa chips with sand, and somehow I think that it has actually made this particular plant a little bit more able to handle the situation, because I don't want to lose this expensive plant. This is one of the most expensive Anthuriums that I actually come across. One of the factors that I must mention here is that this was actually one of the trending plants, which actually was sold roughly about RM 300 ringgit. I think now has dropped into half the price, and actually is in that stable price 150. So in a way, it is still there, has not dropped its price value. I can say that when it comes to tropical hardy plants, there are only two plants which I actually come across, which is very good. This is Anthurium Magnificum and Anthurium Crystallinum, and both these particular two plants are very able to hybridize between both of them, and somehow I find that it actually seems to be very hardy, and I find that there are many variation varieties available. In this particular one that I want to show to you here is that this is actually identified as Magnificum hybrid, and you can look at it that this is when it comes the plant by itself, when it's actually cultivated, the newer leaf appear to become more bigger as time goes by. This is what I actually purchased it from a vendor who had just passed to me with three spent leaves. It's quite not so good looking, because somehow I find that Anthuriums do tend to have a wilder side, where the leaf do tend to have a little bit of a damage factor on it. I believe that because the newer leaves are very fragile. As we can look over here, is that it is very thin and very fragile looking. So in a way, Anthurium seems to have this particular factor when the leaves are very fragile. So a lot of care is required not to be bruised or easily damaged on them, because once the damage is occurred on them, it is going to be actually permanent. I must say that I've actually purchased this particular plant from a plant vendor who actually sold to me as Magnificum, but after a while when I've checked through, it's actually a hybrid. However, because of my zealousness and I just want to have some collection of it, it was actually a very good price, actually sold to me for RM55. During that time, it was actually a very expensive plant. So in a way, I would say that I would consider this one of my collection plants, and I find that most hybrids are actually unique. So this particular one is actually a unique one, which I find it's Magnificum hybrid, which is very much on a lighter tone. This particular one I've actually purchased from another vendor. She mentioned to me that this particular one is actually a hybrid between Magnificum and Crystallinum. I noticed that there's a lot of say on the particular when it comes to petiole, where there are formation where it appears to be on a square form or a D form, but I think most of it that I'm actually having in my hands are very much a round form. So in a way, I don't have much of a difference here. But however, I noticed that this particular leaf it seems to be a little bit more glossy looking and very much light green, and also there's a unique factor here. We can look over here at the central part of it. There's some kind of protruding kind of a dot in appearance, and I find that is unique for this particular type of Anthurium. I can say that one of the features when it comes to a hybrid with the Magnificum species, what I notice here is that they do not form a clustered colony like a Crystallinum, and hence it's actually one singular plant growing tall. Apart from that, this particular features is that when I find that the new buds and formation seems to be a little bit more on a red tones, which is very much similar like a Anthurium Crystallinum. So it's a little bit of this and that. Of course, as like most cases, when it comes to younger leaves at the base, it appears to be very small. I have had the tendency to trim them off, but I just left it for this moment of time to see and observe how it actually goes. And at the back there, you can see a slight bent, a kind of a node at the tip of the petiole with the leaf. So in a way, these are the slight variation and difference which I find with any other varieties of Crystallinum and Magnificum hybrids. Also, I've noticed that they tend to grow big when they are repotted to a bigger pot, but however, I'm just controlling it because overwatering can actually kill this plant. Okay, here there's a side-by-side difference between two Magnificum hybrids with Crystallinum, and you can notice that the one of the difference here is that the one that I mentioned here, the one has this particular dot and the other one do not have that dot. Both of them actually are hybrid of the same kind, so a slight difference here and there, but what I want to show to you, that out of my zealousness of collecting all the plants based on what the vendors are actually saying, but once you have in your hands and you're figuring out exactly whether you're actually having the same plant or two different plants. Still with another hybrid, I've come across this particular one which actually fall in love with it. If you can notice, it has a little bit of a regale kind of features with the, and if you can notice, it has such a shining kind of velvety look on this. I was actually thinking twice whether I want to purchase it or not to purchase it, and I was a little bit uh, skeptical about whether I want to take it or not. But however, and looking at it with close inspection, I actually made a good decision in purchasing it, because it is indeed a different type. And if you can look closely here, this is actually a spent leaf. No doubt it has a very strong prominent node at the dot kind of thing, but there are veins. If you look at it, the midrib seems to be actually protruding against the foliage, and I find that this particular feature is not available in other types of hybrids. Can you see over here, it's a little bit more like a cross star shape kind of thing, and the vein seems to be jutting out, and seems to be a little bit more far unique compared to the other types that I have. Again, as I mentioned to you, that when it comes to plants coming from vendors, they don't really take care of it, and hence the leaves seems to have seen a better days about it. I did have a thought whether I want to trim this thing off, but I just left it and see how it goes. Maybe I would do so when I find a new better leaves in appearance, and therefore then I might trim it. And if we look at over here, this is another unique thing, sort of like a hanger kind of a factor, and I have to put a stick on it because I find that the leaves tend to fall everywhere, and it can actually damage. Also, it has aerial roots in formation. However, it doesn't have a clustered form where there no sign of any appearance of babies or plantlets coming from the sand. So in a way, I noticed that this is one singular plant, very much closely related or more prominent towards the Magnificum site. I have one challenge though, because I'm now having a lot of collection of these Anthuriums, I'm actually running out of space, and the other factor here is that these leaves can be easily damaged if they are grouped together too closely, and bruising or any accidental how do you say damage can occur, and that's the end of these leaves. So in a way, it is challenging. But again, it is more of a trial and error, and I'm just trying my hands on this. This is a new leaf. You can look carefully how it is. It's so fragile looking, so handle with care is actually a very utmost factor on this particular type of plant. Another factor that you have to really put in snail bait or any of these kind of things immediately, and be vigilant of it, because you don't want snails or slug to actually eat these tender young roots and shoots, because this takes months for them to form another plant. So this is my collection so far. I hope you enjoyed my show, and this is what I have. Actually, this is a very old video of mine. Actually, I've forgotten about it, and I just kept it aside, and I was just going through, and I found that this collection is here, so therefore I would like to share with you. And I hope you really enjoyed the plant collection here when it comes to this Anthurium Crystallinum, Anthurium Clarinarium, and Crystal Hope, and together with the Magnificum, different types of hybrids. I have shared a lot of details on how I care for this particular plant in my other older videos, but if you just for a basic factor of it, they are actually a high humidity plants, and if you don't have one, just change the soil medium and water them daily, and actually that's good enough, and it's very much of a tropical plant kind of a situation. This is my light and easy video. I have come to a conclusion of my video. I hope you enjoyed my show here and my garden. And if you have any questions, do put a comment below, and I'll try my best to answer them as my best ability as possible. Thank you so much for visiting, and see you again in my next video. Take care. Bye.